I was happy that he was dead. And then, that life-flowing sap that runs through all of us who are connected to Christ says, yeah, you're angry and you're happy, but that's not who we are, Eric. We are about reconciliation and forgiveness. And I'm sure forgiveness will come, but it's not coming today for me. But I have to remember who I am and whose I am. And so do you. We are called to bear fruit, to love one another. Not when it's easy, but in times like this when it is so hard. 2 churches in the Howard County, Patapsco region have volunteered to hold services and bury the killer so that they can begin the process of reconciliation and forgiveness. Those are the fruits of the vine. Those are the fruits of how people know that we're disciples of Christ. Those are what we're called to do, the hard things. Last week or the week before we said, it was last week, that if you say you love someone but you don't act it, then you're a liar and no good in the eyes of the church or in the eyes of God. Because love is not just words. It is bearing fruit. And the fruit that we must bear is love. None of us knew the shooter. We don't know what his problems were. We don't know anything. So to surmise that he was mentally ill or drug addicted or anything is a false assumption. But we must know that he was troubled. And when we have someone who's troubled, who do they turn to? They turn to us. They turn to us. And it can be frustrating as the devil when you minister to the same people on every day with the same problems and they don't change their behavior. But that's not who we are. We are called to love. And it's hard. And sometimes it leads to death. But I would rather die like Mary Marguerite, serving God's broken people, than to rot away at 100 years old. I would rather die and be known as one of Christ's fruitful people than for someone to say he could preach, but he never did anything else. I was grafted into the vine of Christ's body on March 6, 1960. And so for 52 years, that spirit has flown through me, body, mind, and spirit. And sometimes I allow a little cancer of this world to infect it. But I know that when I come here, when I receive the body and the blood of Christ, that his blood will once again flow through mine. That the grace that I need to sustain me through this horrible tragedy will get me through it. I know that this congregation will support those of us who knew Mary Marguerite. And I know that St. Peter's is being held up and held in God's hands by the people of this diocese, because we know that God wins. If we are fully grafted into the body of Christ, and we flower, and we bloom, and we bear fruit, then they will know us by our actions, and our actions are love. I haven't gotten there yet today. Maybe Tuesday when they bury Mary Marguerite from the cathedral, maybe I'll get there. But until then, I know that this anger and pain inside of me needs to be cut off and thrown in the fire so that I can give life again to Christ within me, so that I can be Christ to you, and those of you who are hurt need to have that cut off as well, so you can be Christ to me. Don't think for a minute, though, that we are not going to assess our security situation here at Holy Trinity. We have the cameras, we have the locks, and so if Janice thinks you don't look right, she's not letting you in. Dan. But we have some precautions in place. And so did St. Peter's, but it's because it was someone they knew. So it can happen anywhere. But as Bishop Sutton says, we are not going to do ministry from behind bulletproof glass. We will continue to reach out in love to those who are in need. Will we be a little more mindful? Perhaps. But as it says in the epistle, or the book of Acts, the epistle, we cannot live in fear. We cannot live in fear, because if we do, the devil wins. And we are not grafted into the body of Satan. We are grafted into the body of Christ. We are called to carry on the message of God's reconciling love to the world. And we cannot let this horrible tragedy stop us. We can pause. We can be angry. We can grieve and cry and hurt and wonder why. And that's healthy. And when that period of time is over for each individual, I hope that that branch is pruned away from your heart, so that you can feel the life-giving force of Christ come through your veins again. So that when someone on the street meets you and says, I need your help, you do like Philip does with the eunuch. You jump inside and open his mind and spread the gospel word, so that that person goes forth rejoicing, and that you're snatched from that situation and placed into another situation where you can teach the gospel of Christ. We will not fear. We will not hide. We will not do ministry in darkness, because we have Christ's blood running through our veins, His Spirit in our heart and in our soul. And in God there is no darkness at all. My brothers and sisters, this morning, think about those baptismal vows that you made, were made on your behalf. That you will do everything in your power, everything in your power, to be Christ here on earth. And sometimes for Christians, it means paying the ultimate price. Amen.